What's up, small business heroes? I'm so excited to share with you a little portion of our signature program, PR Starter Pack. This is really helpful because I break down the best subject lines. And remember, your email only gets opened if the subject line is optimized. I'm going to give you so many ideas of how to start that email to whether it's a DM or an email to a journalist or a podcast host that ensures that you have the best chance of getting that email opened. So let's dive into it. I wanted to come on here and tell you a little bit more about how to use this worksheet, which is the winning subject lines and content ideas for 6 months. Now, when I say subject line and content ideas, they're really kind of the same thing, right? Content ideas and subject lines are really pithy one sentence structures that tell your audience what you're going to be telling them, right? And so anytime you want to pitch to a podcast or to get on an IG live, or maybe do a Facebook live with someone who has subject area authority, or if you're partnering up with an influencer that has a lot of followers and you can leverage their audience, this is kind of how you want to pitch it to them. You don't want to write anything more than this. You don't want to write like an entire book. You don't want to do like 5 different pages. They want to know very quickly how you can offer help to their audience and in a way that's digestible. And so what I mean by that is using listicles, like 3 ways to do this, or do's and don'ts, best practices, really quick and dirty things to give people a quick win that's always going to translate really well and be a good point of conversation for that longer lasting relationship, right? So I've given you here all of the ideas that I've written for clients before. And I always say, if you can use data points or tie your pitch to a policy angle, whether it's a seasonal shopping or if it's a new graduation story, right, around May or June, or maybe it's around a holiday or something that's always going to make it more urgent for someone to want to cover it right then. So think about all of the ways the seasons and the trends can tie into your industry. So for example, using data points going back to a survey, you never want to use a yes or no survey. You always want to leave it like from a scale of 1 to 10. That's the best way to collect data. For example, I worked with a client who made hosiery, and she surveyed her clients and she found that size 14 was actually the most popular size. So this is challenging a common belief that retail should cater to women with a smaller size, right? Another way is to survey 2 different groups that seem similar. So for example, my client, Vincent, is a career coach, and he surveyed 2008 graduates with people who graduated in 2020. And he compared their attitudes about the job market and offered that up to a top tier journalist. So he got on Forbes, the Tennessean, Inc., and he did a LinkedIn Live, like sharing their perspectives and their optimism, or maybe lack of optimism about the job market, and compared it to 2008, because in 2008, we also had a financial crisis, right? So these are really easy ways you can use data points and surveys to make your pitch super juicy and super relevant. So another way you can write content ideas or pitch is a quick checklist, right? So for example, if you are doing a skincare product, maybe it's 3 ways to combat winter with like a checklist for 3 things you must have, right? It might be an end of the year checklist. If you're a tax person, end of the year financial wellness checkup, right? Or best practices for whatever it is. These are really simple ways for audiences to get a quick win. Another great one are just do's and don'ts, right? So do's and don'ts for first-time parents homeschooling their children. Do's and don'ts for pet owners who are thinking of feeding their pet raw food, right? Things that are, again, do's and don'ts, juxtapositions, they tend to work really well. Another way is, I really like the number 3. So like 3 ways to be more whatever in your behavior, right? So, 3 ways to be more inclusive in your advertising. Maybe it's 3 ways to be to champion real diversity in your workplace culture, right? Maybe it's 3 ways to have more vulnerable and open conversation for team building, whatever it is, right? Another thing is calling out what a certain group gets wrong about something. Like, for example, what retail gets wrong about women's sizing, or what parents get wrong about homeschooling, or what tech startups get wrong about investor confidence, right? These are all things that puts 2 groups against each other. And because you're not calling out anyone by name, it's not going to be super contentious. Another way that is a great way to write a pitch is ways something is changing something else, right? So for example, I wrote a pitch about how AI is changing insurance in 2020. So for you, it could be ways a certain technology is changing things up in your industry. Or you can get even more micro, how this technology is changing something for a certain demographic. The more specific you are, usually the more powerful and punchy your pitch is going to be. Another thing is calling out something that people didn't know, maybe a blind spot, right? So writing your pitch like one thing you didn't know about this, right? For example, one thing you didn't know about the PPP loans and why it matters, right? Like one thing you didn't know about what's in your food or something, or one thing you didn't know about adaptogens, or if you are in the health food space. So that also works. That is similar to this subject line, which is what people get wrong about something, right? So what millennials get wrong about wellness, or what fashion gets wrong about diversity, or what workplace culture gets wrong about this and that. As long as you're not pinpointing a certain person by name, you're going to be able to get away with it and establish yourself to have a point of view, right? In order to be an authority, you need to have a point of view. You can't just be wishy-washy and everything is fine, right? You need to have a stance on something. And so that's what these subject lines are helping you do. Another way is challenging beliefs. So the biggest misconceptions about something, right? So for example, I have a client who has Lyme disease, and she is using Ayurvedic Eastern medicine to combat Lyme disease. So things, the pitch I wrote for her would be the biggest misconceptions about Lyme disease, or like what is out there right now for Lyme disease, or over-the-counter painkillers for X, Y, and Z, or biggest misconceptions about money, in 2020, or biggest misconceptions about, launching your startup in this climate. Whatever it is that you can offer help with, your insight is super golden. Another thing is how will something change something else in 2021? And I really like this because you're putting a year on it, right? You're basically telling the journalist, this is a story that's for right now. It's not for 5 years from now. So you really should respond, right? So for example, how will our relationship, how will our love lives change in an era of quarantine and stay-at-home culture, right? I recently worked with a sex therapist, and she had all different ways for couples to reconnect, because couples were getting into fights and they were having kind of their love life going down the drain because of everything that was happening. So if you can offer ways to help with a certain phenomenon that's going to be relevant to right now, that's going to make your pitch super helpful, right? Another way is to show people kind of a go behind the scenes to see like how something is made, right? And this is really good for like a gifting angle, or if you're able to like if you do a digital product, right? And if you have a really cool process to make something, whether you are like an architect, or if you're a woodworker, or you're actually building something where the graphics or the process is really cool, you might offer a pitch to tell people, I'm offering you a behind the scenes look at how something is made, right? It could be like if you are restoring, I don't know, old coins or old photos. Like you can go behind the scenes to see how an old photo is restored. That's visually going to be very pleasing, right? Another thing is, what I love is an end of year recap. So if you're launching something like a press release or an announcement, you can also combine that with an end of year recap, right? So if you are launching something to help people make money by, helping them give opportunities, stay at home jobs, it could be about like our end of year recap about what we learned about work-life balance in 2020 and how we can solve a specific issue that was brought up, right? So an end of year recap could be, what we learned about the role of men and women in the household in 2020, or it could be about what coronavirus taught us about the public school education system, or what it taught us about the stock market. Whatever it is, that is really good because that shows consumers that you are on the pulse about what people loved about this year, what they hated, what they got right and wrong. And that is great also for an end of the year newsletter blast to your audience and your investors, right? Another one is if you are trying to kind of conserve your energy and you want to pitch for next year, you can start thinking about new year, new you, new year, new routines for Q1 of 2021, right? So if you are in wellness, that's big, right? A lot of people start new habits and new routines in the new year. So if you have something that is a a wellness product, that could be perfect for that. Or maybe it's something about social media detoxing, right? If you have a product that helps people monitor their usage online more and tries to give them good habits, it could be a new year, new story. So these are all the ways that you can think about writing your pitch, having a winning subject line. Remember, you're only as good as your subject line, because if it doesn't get read, the email does not get open. And you can also repurpose these for any kind of content on your website, contributing to a higher domain authority website, like I said, all the different ways you can think about contributing value and putting it into a content form. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope this is more than enough to get you started. And I look forward to seeing what you make of this.